Hi everyone, I'm Ethan. My dad is a police officer, so solving mysteries is in my blood. However, nothing interesting ever happened to me. Reading stories about detectives was the only thing that saved me from boredom. But then, something incredible happened to me. That's my classmate, Jenna. We had been friends since we learned to speak. Her favorite hobby was driving me crazy with lectures. Other than that, she was cool. One day, our principal announced the start of the Teacher of the Year contest. The students were supposed to vote for their favorite teachers, and the winner would be awarded at a grand ball. No one had any doubts that Mrs. Clark, our literature teacher, would be the winner as always. She was sweet and kind, like a homemade apple pie. Everyone adored her and affectionately called her Mrs. K. I was scrolling through Facebook at recess when I found out that a mysterious robber had appeared in our city and stolen equipment and other valuables from several schools. The police hadn't been able to catch him for a couple months already. Wow, what if my dad took that case? Jenna came up to me. Hi Ethan, have you invited anyone to the ball yet? I rolled my eyes and said that I wasn't interested in such childish nonsense. Dancing was boring. I wish the school thief would show up at the ball though. Then I would be able to catch them. But nothing interesting ever happened to me. Besides, I don't like anyone, so I'm not going. For some reason, Jenna pouted when she heard that. Then we saw Mrs. Clark in the hallway. She was putting all the certificates and statuettes she got for winning Teacher of the Year contests on an exhibition stand. Good morning, Mrs. K. What are you doing? She said she was going to retire, so she brought all her awards to the school so that the students would look at them and remember her. Ethan, there's another box of statuettes in my car. Be a dear and bring it here. Sure. The box turned out to be so big and heavy that I could barely carry it. Ugh. It took me a long time to open the door, but then a girl with a gorgeous smile helped me. Come in, I'll hold the door for you. Oh, she looked like a beautiful dark-haired angel. Before I could thank her, the stranger walked into the principal's office. I decided that she was probably a new student at our school, and I would definitely get to know her because the robbery of the century had just happened. She stole my heart! I handed the box to Mrs. Clark and ran to history class. The teacher was not in the classroom yet. One of my classmates, a bully called Rob, was smearing glue on the teacher's chair. It turned out that he had found out a college graduate would be teaching us history from then on. So, he decided to welcome the young teacher with a dumb prank. Everyone took their seats. Then, that beautiful stranger from the hallway walked into the classroom and smiled sweetly. Hi guys, I'm Miss Hart, your new history teacher. I was stunned. Had I almost hit on a teacher? And then I realized that she was about to sit down on that chair. Oh no, I was about to warn her not to do that, but she noticed that something was wrong without my help. She frowned and looked around the classroom. Glue on the chair, huh? Everyone tensed up because we were sure that she would call the principal. But Miss Hart suddenly laughed and said that she used to get up to no good at school too. I came up with pranks that were much crazier than this. The new teachers were usually treated with suspicion, but Miss Hart was an exception. She knew a lot about all the new games and TV series, so we could talk to her like she was our friend. She also had a unique teaching method. For example, instead of giving us boring lectures, Miss Hart organized reenactments of historical events and outdoor lessons and even took us to museums. Long story short, everyone in my class fell in love with her. Jenna was the only one who seemed to dislike Miss Hart. I'm telling you, there's something wrong with her. Jenna looked very cute when she got angry, so I joked that she was just jealous. It's not like that. I just don't like the way she teaches us. One day, Ms. Hart suggested introducing a new tradition in our school, a rose festival. The students were supposed to sneakily give roses to their crushes. Then, those crushes had to guess who was in love with them and ask them to dance at the ball at the end of the week. Everyone liked the idea, even me. However, I didn't like any of my classmates and couldn't participate in the challenge. However, the very next day, I found a rose in my backpack. Well, did I have a secret admirer? Awesome! I tried to think of who that mysterious beauty could be, and then it dawned on me. Miss Hart liked me back, but she couldn't admit it openly, so she came up with the Rose Festival. I was pulled out of my thoughts when I saw something weird. Our sweet Mrs. K saw a poster with an announcement about the Rose Festival and angrily tore it off the wall. What a disgusting tradition! I will talk to the principal and ask him to ban it. I wondered what came over that sweet old lady. Then Miss Hart appeared in the hallway. The two teachers looked at each other for a moment. Mrs. K suddenly growled and turned red like a tomato. Rebecca Olson, the nightmare of every teacher. You came back to drive me crazy. You must be mistaking me for someone else. Now, excuse me, I'm late for class. Our history teacher smiled, explained that she wasn't Rebecca, and walked into the classroom. You can't fool me, Rebecca. I'm watching you. What was that just now? Was Mrs. Clark nuts? That poor old lady. From that day on, I felt like I was living in a detective book. A mysterious robber was operating in the city, and my dad and his partner often came to our school to make sure that everyone was all right there. I kept finding more and more roses. I even bragged to my classmates about it. Everyone envied me, except for Jenna. Ethan, you really are a moron if you think that our teacher is sending you those. What do you even see in her? Let me know when your brain comes back from vacation. Classic Jenna. Mrs. Clark kept glaring at our history teacher. Meanwhile, all the students grew to like Miss Hart so much that we decided to vote for her in the contest. She quickly beat out all her opponents. It seemed that Mrs. K finally had a worthy competitor. Life at school was no longer boring. Soon, representatives from the parents' committee and the school council came to our history lessons. The principal often called Miss Hart to his office and scolded her for something. Something weird was going on, and I decided to ask Miss Hart about it. She sighed sadly and told me that someone had been writing anonymous complaints about her and saying she wasn't doing a good job. That's why the inspections kept coming to her classes. What? Those jerks! I'll find out who has a grudge against you. Thank you, Ethan. That's very nice of you, but I can handle it. My heart started pounding when I saw her smile. I decided to become her knight in shining armor and get to the bottom of it. I left her office and immediately ran into Jenna. She startled when she saw me and hid something behind her back. What was up with her? Could she be hiding one of those anonymous complaints? Now that I thought about it, she often grumbled that Miss Hart was a bad teacher. Maybe it was all her doing. Tell me, are you the one framing Miss Hart? Are you out of your mind? Why would I do that? It seems on brand for you. Is that what you think of me? Ethan, you're such a jerk! Jenna gritted her teeth and stomped away. I wanted to follow her, but then I suddenly saw Mrs. Clark coming out of the staff room. She quickly looked around and clutched something to her chest. Hey! It was Miss Hart's purse! Why did the old lady have it? I followed her. She hid in the empty dining room and started to rummage greedily in Miss Hart's purse. Something finally clicked, and I understood everything. Mrs. K was afraid that the young teacher would beat her and decided to play dirty. It made my blood boil. I thought better of you. Do you really want to win like that? The old lady flinched and said that I had misunderstood everything. I really wanted to get Molly, or whatever name she goes by now, fired, but not because I'm afraid she will become the new teacher of the year. She told me that she had known my history teacher back when she was still a kid and went to this school. Her name was Rebecca Olson back then. She used to be terribly mean and pulled crazy pranks. Rebecca targeted Mrs. Clark more than others, and the old lady still had nightmares about it. The Rose Festival used to take place at the same time as the Teacher of the Year contest. I was supposed to be presented with the award. That naughty girl came on stage with a huge gift box and said that she wanted to congratulate me. However, the box was full of disgusting worms. I screamed and accidentally dropped them on my new dress. It was terrible. After that prank, Mrs. K got the bully expelled, and now the old lady was afraid that her student was still holding a grudge for that. She believed Rebecca changed her name and came back to get revenge on her. I wanted to find proof that Miss Hart is actually Rebecca. I was sorry that Mrs. K had to go through all that, but I was also sure she was mistaken. I promised I wouldn't tell anyone about what I saw and volunteered to return Miss Hart's purse to the staff room. Unfortunately, the principal caught me red-handed. Can you imagine? He thought I was trying to steal the answers to an upcoming test. You are getting a detention for this. Tomorrow, you will stay after classes and film a video about the history of the school for the award ceremony. Damn it! Helping Mrs. K was a mistake. Filming a video wasn't a problem, but I was in a terrible mood anyway. I even wrongly accused Jenna. I went home and saw Miss Hart in the parking lot. She was changing a tire. I didn't hesitate to offer my help. She jokingly called me her hero and asked me to get the spare tire out. I blushed and opened the trunk. Hold on. There was a huge gift box tied with a bow lying next to the tire. Miss Hart saw me pause, slammed the trunk shut, and said coldly that I could go. Why was she so nervous? Before going to bed, I filmed an apology video for Jenna. I'm sorry. I overreacted and acted like an idiot. I was about to go to bed when I heard Dad talking on the phone. He was telling his partner that another school had been robbed the other day. I mentally drew a map of the city and realized that we could be next. Wow, the reality was so much more exciting than my books. The next day, Jenna ignored me at school. After classes, she went to the hall to decorate it for the ball with everyone. Meanwhile, I started working on the video. I sat down at a computer in the library and started to search for old photos that I could use, and then I came across pictures from the ball that Mrs. Clark had told me about. In one of them, our teacher was receiving the Teacher of the Year award on stage, and in another one, some girl with a vicious smirk was handing her a box full of worms. I took a closer look at her and was stunned. That girl really did look a hell of a lot like Miss Hart. The gears in my head started turning faster. It all made sense now. I'd seen that box in my teacher's car. What if she came back to repeat her legendary prank and humiliate poor Mrs. K again? She even brought back the Rose Festival so that everything would be just like it was when she was still a student. I got lost in thought and didn't realize someone was coming up to me from behind. A hand fell on my shoulder. Ah! I almost fell off my chair. When I turned around, I saw Jenna, who was laughing. Phew! I didn't know that Miss Hart's personal knight was such a coward. And I've been thinking, I forgive you. To be honest, I didn't recognize my friend at first. She put on a beautiful dress and let her hair down. Oh, I never noticed it before, but Jenna was beautiful. I hugged her and told her about my investigation. I told you there was something wrong with her. I just saw her walking down the hallway with a big box in her hands. Are there worms in it again? Wait a minute. Now that I thought about it, she could not only bring something to the school in that box, but also carry something out of the building. It dawned on me that Miss Hart could be the school robbing criminal. It was little wonder strange things started to happen as soon as she appeared. She could have changed her name and come here to steal something during the ball, not to get revenge. I told Jenna about my theory. You're a genius, Ethan. Call your father. So I did. He promised to come as soon as possible. Jenna and I decided to keep Miss Hart busy until the police arrived. When we ran into the hall, the ball had already begun. Miss Hart was holding the box and looking around excitedly. She must have already stolen something. How could I check it? At that moment, the principal took the mic and started to make a tedious speech. And then, he announced that Molly Hart had become the Teacher of the Year. Everyone applauded and she had to go on stage. I realized that it was my chance, so I ran up to her and pulled the box out of her hands. Let me hold this while you get your award. Ethan, no, be careful. The police burst into the hall. I pointed at Miss Hart and the cops surrounded her on the stage. When she found out what she was suspected of, she laughed and picked up the microphone to explain everything. My real name is Rebecca Olson. I used to be a student of Mrs. K and hurt her terribly. After I was expelled, I felt terrible for the way I acted. I went to college and became a teacher. I even changed my name to leave my past behind me. Wow, it turned out that Miss Hart regretted pulling that prank. So she got a job at our school and decided to recreate the events of that evening to apologize. The thing in the box was a cake with Mrs. K's face on it. Please forgive me for what I did. You've always inspired me. The old lady burst into tears and forgave her. And then, Miss Hart received her first award and dedicated it to Mrs. K. I thought Dad would get mad at me because I turned out to be wrong. But then he was informed by radio that the school robber had just been detained on the other side of the city. So Dad and his partner stayed and even tried the cake. Phew, Miss Hart turned out to be a good person after all. What a relief. After that was cleared up, I took all the roses that I had received from my secret admirer and approached the teacher to ask her to dance. But she looked surprised and said she hadn't given me any roses. But who could it be then? Nobody likes me. Are you sure? She smiled slyly and pointed behind me. I turned around and saw Jenna. My Jenna. She looked impossibly beautiful and shy. She admitted that she was my secret admirer and that she had been in love with me for years. Remember that time I thought she was hiding a complaint behind her back in the hallway? And it turned out that Jenna had actually been trying to leave another rose for me then. I asked her to dance with me, and then we became an item. Mrs. K soon retired and now travels the world. Miss Hart is still working at our school. She often says that she teaches us and we teach her too. What is your relationship with your teachers like?